Specific to PG&E and their current relicensing application that's before you, acknowledged in your remarks receipt of a letter asking for sort of a pause, if you will, while they undergo some further studies. Is there an official response from NRC to that letter yet?
Not yet. The staff is currently evaluating. We didn't receive the letter until Monday. Some preliminary discussions that we did have, though. The staff has invested many thousands of hours in the environmental review and the safety review. And it's our desire currently, which may be subject to change depending on what the commission decides to do, but it's our desire now to publish what we have done. That way we can make it available to elected officials, we can make it to members of the public, they can review it, they can study it. If they have questions or concerns about what the staff has done to date, it's a publicly available record that anybody has access to. So we would like to get the safety evaluation report out, which documents the safety review as well as the draft and final environmental reports.
So you talked about the safety review, the environmental review. Can you speak specifically to how seismic safety would be considered as part of this relicensing application and process?
Right. So with respect to seismic issues, seismic safety issues that impact or challenge the design of the facility are dealt with on an immediate basis. So if the NRC became aware of a seismic or safety concern that challenged safe operation of the facility, we would take action today. With respect to the license renewal process, we take seismic issues and see how they may impact the long-term aging of plant components, systems, or structures. And we would also look to see if there were additional mitigative features the facility could add to offset the risk of any seismic type concern that there may be.
Senator Blakeslee.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to echo, first I want to express my appreciation to the Chair for calling this committee hearing and for his comments regarding the unique nature of 2% of the facilities, or 2 facilities, 4 reactors of the 104 in the nation. I'm 48 hours from testifying before the U.S. Senate to Senator Boxer with Chairman Yasko present. And we had a very long and thorough discussion about whether or not the NRC's review, safety procedures in particular, were properly designed for the unique circumstances we find ourselves in California with our 2 facilities at Diablo and at San Onofre, and I believe they're not. And I'm very concerned that the NRC is looking at this issue with rose-colored glasses. And I want to see if I can't better understand your process for assessing the seismic review, performing the seismic review. As you know, the plant was initially built with assertions that there were no seismic hazards, and the Hosgri fault was only found afterwards. And now, after much more scrutiny, some of it starting here in this body, another fault has been discovered, this one within a few hundred yards of the plant. You indicate that you will be doing performing a review, if I'm reading your testimony correctly. The NRC is in the process of performing a review. And you're basing that review, as I understand it, off of PG&E's representations. Is that accurate? In part. Okay. PG&E provided us a report that we're assessing. I believe I'm reading from the executive summary of NRC report that says, the magnitude of deterministic earthquakes for the shoreline fault, magnitude 6.5 in parentheses, is less than the magnitude for the Hosgri, magnitude 7.1. But due to the shorter distance, the ground emotions from the 84th percentile ground motion for the shoreline fault are greater than the updated ground motions from the Hosgri fault source. So as I'm reading your own representations here, you're acknowledging the shoreline fault presents a greater threat to the facility than the Hosgri fault. Is that accurate? Than the Hosgri as revised, not the Hosgri as originally This is the analyzed fault which presents, given our current understanding, the greatest threat, given our current understanding of the Hosgri. You need to give me a moment to explain that then.
It's not a simple yes or no. So the Hosgri, as originally understood, presented a greater ground acceleration than the shoreline. Based on the additional studies that were completed, in part those directed by the state of California to PG&E to perform, they have a better understanding and characterization of the Hosgri fault.
That's a yes.
So the shoreline is greater than the new Hosgri, not greater than the old Hosgri.
So given our current understanding, this is the fault that presents the greatest threat to Diablo, correct?
It's in terms of ground acceleration?
No, in terms of pixie dust. Yes.
Actually, all those faults are of concern to the NRC. So we've designed that plan. It's designed to a certain ground acceleration. The shoreline fault is well below the ground acceleration that the plan is designed to,
How do you know that?
based on the scientific studies that have been performed to date.
By whom?
There was a number of folks that were involved with that. PG&E was a party to that. We expect licensees to do those studies and provide the results of those to the NRC, but there was also the USGS was involved with those, and several universities were involved.
And I've spoken with the scientist who did this work, who is not in agreement with some of these representations.
And I would say that the NRC has independent reviewers that are looking at that. They're looking at the opinions that PG&E provided. We'll be looking at the opinions that others have on the matter, and we'll weigh in independently.
Well, how are you going to weigh in independently? It says here in June of 2011, if we are not acquiring the data to ascertain the actual location of the fault, the length of the fault, the distance of the fault from the facility, and its connection to the Hosgri, how can you possibly make an assertion about the seismic potential of the shoreline fault, which you're planning to do in 2011 under your own testimony, before you acquire the information about the fault?
We continually review and assess data as it's made available to the Commission.
The data is not yet available. So if you're going to do relicensing, which you say you'll do the safety component in June of 2011, and the seismic work to make sound judgments will not be in hand at that time, wouldn't it be premature to simply do an update after the fact when the critical data on the fault, which is most controlling of strong motion, is not yet in hand and won't be in hand until that time?
We're reviewing the data that we have in hand as of today, as new data
But the
comes
data you
in.
have in hand is not adequate.
Let me chime in on this question as well. I mean, it's an important question, and obviously the June 2011 timeframe is part of what's driving the question. Is the data we need available by then or not? You're now in receipt of a letter from PG&E saying, let's suspend this thing while we do some studies. So is the June 2011 timeframe still the timeframe?
So we're talking, June 2011 has several reference points to it, right? So there's the safety report we want to make publicly available, which is due to go, this documents all the work the NRC has done to date, June 2011 timeframe. There's the draft environmental report, which documents all the work the staff has done to date, June 2011 timeframe. There's the report PG&E submitted based on their understanding, current day understanding of the shoreline fault, that we have technical staff back east in the process of reviewing. They originally had intended to have that piece of the data reviewed over the summer timeframe. That may get pushed back a little bit based on their availability. As additional studies are done and that information becomes available to the NRC, we'll look at that and see how that impacts the safe operation of the facility on a real-time, as soon as we get it basis.
Let me try to interpret Senator Blakeslee's question a little bit. Would it or would it not be prudent to revisit the June 2011 timeframe for purposes of obtaining, even if it's not readily available, we can anticipate data, pertinent data, critical data being available in the foreseeable future to at least address seismic safety issues as part of an overall safety evaluation?
Right. So two things again. I want to go back and reiterate. If there's a seismic safety concern that threatens the safe operation of that facility, it gets dealt with outside of the license renewal process. It's an immediate safety concern. It gets dealt with on an immediate basis. And all the data that we've looked at to date we've done that to evaluate it on an immediate basis. The second part of that, we received PG&E's letter asking for us to defer final issuance of a license renewal application. And currently the commission has that under consideration, and we have not made any final determinations as to that process.
If I may follow up, TEPCO made similar assurances about their understanding of offshore fault systems. In 2007, the largest nuclear facility in the world suffered significant damage due to an earthquake. I think it was 18 kilometers away that ended up being on a fault that was twice the size that was expected. And similarly, we've seen most recently, a little over a month and a week, almost a week ago, an earthquake magnitude 9 on a fault that was designed or believed to only be capable of a 7.9. And we're now in a situation where we have information about a shoreline fault, a new fault in my district, next to my constituents, and you're telling me you're just going to continue business as usual and not delay to get the information before you do your site safety review. And that's unacceptable.
We have evaluated all the data presented to us regarding the shoreline fault, and we believe that Diablo Canyon is safely operating today.
So Mr. Pruett, let me ask you another timeline question here.
All right.
So when PG&E submitted the proper paperwork to begin the licensing process, that sets off, I imagine, sort of a schedule of events and timeframes, deadlines along the way. They've asked you to specifically withhold relicensing until seismic studies are complete. I wasn't clear about that earlier. There's possibly new information coming. I don't expect it to be you. Who is the individual or entity that decides to adjust the time frame to review the relicensing application or not?
Right. So what will happen when the new data comes in? The license renewal staff will evaluate the new data that comes in, as well as the safety staff that does the inspections. The license renewal staff will take that data, they'll assess it against the severe accident mitigation alternatives, and they'll assess it against the aging management programs, and modify or update with a supplement both the safety review and the environmental review.
But who is the individual or the entity that could decide, is authorized to decide, whether or not to modify the time frame for a relicensing application?
Yeah, so the staff will make a proposal as to how we respond to the PG&E letter with respect to their request to withhold final issuance.
One more time.
Right, I'm getting there. So the staff will make a recommendation to the commission, and the commission will decide whether or not to implement the staff's recommendation or provide a communication back with an alternative approach.
Okay. Sorry, Senator Blakeslee, keep interrupting. I'm just trying to be helpful here.
You're being very helpful, and I appreciate it. Obviously, this is important to me, not from an academic perspective. This is my community. These are the people I need to stand up and speak out for. And having just come from the U.S. Senate, where I heard the same doublespeak from your boss, I'm very concerned that the NRC is not getting the message and is not understanding the gravity of the importance of having a higher level of safety review regarding earthquakes, be sure you have the information before you check off the box. And that Senator Boxer, Congresswoman Capps, with a unanimous vote of my Board of Supervisors, and I think you'd find most people in this building would agree that the NRC, now that it is preempted and under federal law has taken away a safety role from the state of California, had darn well better do their job and not finish that job in terms of doing that safety review until they wait to get the data to make the right answers. Thank you, Chair.